What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the next entry in my top 10 series, and today I'm going to focus on my top 10 favorite shooters on the Sega Genesis. I feel like I probably have all of the shooters released on the US Sega Genesis. There are quite a few Mega Drive exclusives I don't have in my collection yet that I'd love to have, but I feel like I'm qualified to talk about them now that I've played all of them that I own in the collection. So let's go ahead and I'll cover those. Like I said, I typically call them shooters. You may call them shmups, shoot them ups, pew pew games. I've heard it all. You just call it whatever you want, but for the sake of this video, I will be calling them shooters. And here are my top 10 favorite. So for the first one of those, I would like to nominate Battle Squadron. This is one that not many people talk about. It was released by EA, even though I don't believe they developed it. I think it was European developed, and what I will say about Battle Squadron is it actually has really good graphics and an incredibly difficult difficulty curve. So I like this game quite a bit. It's one of the best vertical shooters on the system for sure. I don't really know why this one's not more popular. I think maybe the difficulty scares people away, or just the EA name. But definitely worth a shot, and it comes in this kind of oddball cardboard box. So number 10 is Battle Squadron. Number 9, and before I go into this, I will say my list is very heavily tilted towards shooters developed by Toaplan. I felt like they were one of the finest arcade developers of shooters, and a lot of their games got ported to the Sega Genesis. So of that, quite a few of them made my list. So number 9 is the last one that got released on Sega Genesis, and that is Grindstormer. This one is probably the most graphically intense of the Toaplan ported shooters, and it almost is too much for the Genesis to handle. This one has some issues with slowdown. However, overall the graphics look great. I think they were almost to the level of bullet hell shooters when they made this game. And if you play their shooter that followed this on the Japanese Sega Saturn, Batsugan, you can see exactly what they were going for when they were headed down this path with this game. So very cool game, definitely, like I said, one of their final works, and well done other than a few technical glitches. The other thing I'll say about this game is it's very difficult to find a working copy of this game. There were some issues with a cheap PCB that they used to put the chips on for the game, and you can repair the game if you get a dead one, but be very careful if you're looking to pick this up. There are, if I had to guess, I would say probably 70% of the ones in the market currently have issues, either with freezing up or not working at all. So buyer beware, but number 9 is Grindstormer. Number 8 is one that I don't necessarily hear a whole lot about, but I think it's really a great looking shooter on the Genesis, and that is Wings of War. This one is horizontal style. It's more of a fantasy themed shooter, as you can probably tell by the artwork. Your main character has wings, and it's one of the people shooters, as they're sometimes called. Graphics are a little bit dark on this one, however they are highly detailed, and I think that makes up for it. Very cool, like I said, kind of Greek type fantasy artwork, and really plays well. I would tell you the Japanese title of this game, but I'd probably butcher the pronunciation of it, something like Gainog. But very well playing shooter, has tight controls, and I give this number 8, Wings of War. Number 7 is another somewhat unusual shooter for the system, and it is horizontal as well, and that is Steel Empire. What I will say about Steel Empire that makes it unique is you play as a blimp. There are not enough blimp shooters out there, I can tell you that right away. This one is known for having kind of Art Deco era graphics, I guess you could say, early 1930s style, and very detailed once again, a little bit small on the character graphics themselves, but very detailed game itself, nicely playing and very action-packed, for a horizontal shooter. This one was somewhat of a late release, but I think you can pick this one up still somewhat reasonably. It's not one of the more expensive shooters on the system. So number 7 is Steel Empire. Number 6 is one that is going for quite a bit of money these days, And this was the final shooter released on the system that was developed by Technosoft. It was released in the USA by Renovation Games, and that is Elemental Master. This one is also considered a people shooter, and it is vertically scrolling. This one you play as your main character and scroll through several levels. There's all based on the elements. There's a fire level, a wind level, water level, all those kinds of things in the game. Very good looking game, incredibly difficult. You get a few lives in it, but you'll burn through them really fast. I've never been able to beat this game, and I've tried for many years, but definitely a worthy challenge, and that is number 6, Elemental Master. So number 5, we get into my favorite game developer, and that is Taito. And this was the finest shooter I believe they released on the system, and that is Sagayam. I don't really know why they went for the Sagayam name on this game, because most people would know the series as the Darius series. This was basically Darius 2 in the arcade, so great horizontal shooter. The arcade version of this actually had 2 screens to play on, so they made some compromises for the home version in that your character graphics are incredibly small. However, the detail doesn't suffer. So it is a really cool looking game. Interesting music, just like all the Darius games, and can definitely recommend Sagayam as a tight playing number 5 on my list of the shooters. Number 4 is probably the most notorious shooter on the system for popularity and rarity. I don't know about rarity myself, but it is definitely a difficult one to find in good condition. I've owned this one for several years, and this is Musha. Musha has a great robot futuristic look to it. Really neat layers of depth in the graphics of this. Compiled did a nice job coming up with some neat graphical tricks, especially for a very early release on the Genesis. I believe this came out in 1990. Great looking shooter, probably not a whole lot needs to be said about this one. Plays great. Overall, it's not my all-time favorite compile shooter, but it is definitely up there, and I can definitely see why everyone wants to own this as part of their collection. So number 4 is Musha. So now we're getting down to the top 3, and now we are back to a Toaplan release. This one was a very early Genesis release. I think it came out in 1989. It might as well have been a launch game if it wasn't. And that is Truxton. This one, again, was an arcade port. Great looking vertical shooter. Incredibly cool bomb effects on this. You have this neat skull effect every time you throw a bomb on this game. And nicely colored, especially good translation of the arcade game. I've heard some reviews of the PC Engine version of this port as far as which one's better. I think it's kind of up in the air between the two, but for an early Genesis game, they really went all out. And I would say number 3 on my list is Truxton. So now we're at number 2, and that one is another Technosoft release. This one is one of their horizontally scrolling shooters, and that is Thunder Force 3. Many people probably also like Thunder Force 4, which was also known as Lightning Force in the United States. I think that one's good, but this one I have a little more nostalgia for. I've been playing this one a lot longer, and as far as this one looks, incredibly cool background scrolling effects. You can see kind of some of the fire effects in that one screenshot there. This game blows away the Super Nintendo port of the game, which was released as Thunder Spirits, but this one is definitely number 2 on my list. Great playing game, great looking game, and the challenge level, I would say, is just right on this one. I also like that you can stage select what order you want to play the levels in this game. It's a nice feature of the game. So number 2 is Thunder Force 3. So now we're down to the number 1 on my top 10 shooters of the Sega Genesis list. And I kind of feel like this one will be a little bit surprising to most, considering the quality of some of the other games on the list. However, again, I am very biased toward the Toaplan released games, and as far as the most addicting gameplay, this one gets me every time. I'll sit down and play this for a few minutes and get hooked, and end up playing it for a couple hours. And that is Fire Shark. Yet another of the arcade conversions by Toaplan. Plays absolutely great. It's interesting that the graphics on this one are actually a little more dull than even their earlier release Truxton, but the gameplay is so spot on this one. I really like how your ship powers up in this one. Once you get to that highly powered level, you can kind of mow down the competition, but then if you lose a life, you really got to struggle to get some of your power-ups back. So it adds an interesting level of challenge to the game. This one kind of has a military feel to it, and overhead view, you know, you can bomb the ground level and things like that. Really good looking game, you know, even with the kind of dark graphics. But as far as challenge level and replayability, this one is tops on my list. So number 1 of my top 10 shooters of the Genesis is Fire Shark. I do want to add, to close out my list here, that a couple other games that I really enjoy on the Genesis were not considered, just because they don't have forced scrolling. So some of the tank shooter games like Granada, I didn't include those because they do not have a forced scrolling like all these other games do. So with that said, I'd love to hear in the comments what your favorite shooters are for the Sega Genesis. This system is incredibly rich with shooters. There's many that I do enjoy that didn't quite make the cut, and I'd love to hear what you think are your favorites on the system, as well as if you have Mega Drive selections that I should check out. I'm certainly open to those suggestions. I would like to get some more shooters for the Japanese Mega Drive. So thank you very much for watching. Please leave a comment, like, comment, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.